Alrighty guys, welcome to our college football free pick video here today for week 5. We're in week 5 already, 2022 season. And of course, my name is Brock Page. I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. I also sell my personal sports bets on patreon.com/BrockPage. And if you want to see which one of these games on this video that I'm actually betting on personally, there's only one way to do that, and that's to sign up for my college football tier package bets on my website. And the link for those plays is in the description section below. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. We're going to take a look at Utah State squaring off against BYU, 8 o'clock Eastern start time on Thursday, September 29th, 2022. BYU's minus 23.5, total 61. BYU 3-1 straight up for the season. They actually have covers versus the likes of Baylor and South Florida. They're currently in the top 25 in pass defense. They're led by Ben Bywater, who has 28 tackles, a sack, and an interception. Now, Utah State on the other side, they're 108th in passing offense, really struggling throwing the ball. And on the other side of the football, defensively, they're allowing over 205 yards a game on the ground. Needless to say, they are struggling. They're actually on a 3-game skid right now. When it comes to the total, Utah State went 4-0 to the under for the entire year. No real surprise there. I'm going to lean toward BYU minus 23.5, under 61. Next game, Tulane taking on Houston Friday night. And that will be a 7 o'clock Eastern kickoff on September 30th. Houston's minus 2.5, totals 55 and a hook. Now, the Cougs of Houston, they lost 2 out of their last 3. They're actually just 1-3 against the spread overall for the year. Now, this Houston defense, they have struggled. They definitely have struggled slowing down the pass. They're 122nd in pass defense. They're allowing 36 points a game. Now, Tulane on the other side of things, they're scoring 34 points a game themselves. They've gone 3-1 straight up on the year, and they covered the number 3 times during that stretch. They actually had a big win over Kansas State, 17-10. And on the other side of the football, defensively, the Green Wave, they've been tough there too. They're allowing only 11 points a game. And they're in the top 5 in total yards allowed per contest. Dorian Williams, he has 26 tackles on the year, 1 interception. When it comes to the number, Houston's 4-0 to the over for the entire season. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Tulane plus 2.5, over 55 and a hook. Next game, UTSA, Middle Tennessee, 7:30 p.m. East. UTSA's minus 4.5, total 61 and a hook. Now, Texas San Antonio, they did go 0-2 against the spread in their last 2 straight. They allowed 65 total points combined during that span. This UTSA defense, they're 120th in rush defense. They're allowing over 210 yards a game on the ground. Meanwhile, Middle Tennessee on the other side of things, they've scored 43 points a game on average in their last 3 outings. Actually had a big win this past week over the Miami Hurricanes, 45-31. Now, the Blue Raiders, they're currently on a 3-game winning streak, and they successfully covered the point spread in all 3 of those victories. Now, total-wise, Middle Tennessee's 2-0 to the over in their last couple of games. UTSA's 4-0 to the over for the whole year. I'm going to lean toward Middle Tennessee State plus 4.5, over 61 and a hook. Next game, San Diego State, Boise, 8 o'clock East. Boise's 5.5, total 41. Both teams are 2-2 on the year, 1-3 against the spread. But it's this Boise defense who's allowing just 159 passing yards per game. They're in the top 15 in the country in pass defense. DJ Schramm, he has 33 tackles. That leads the team. They're taking on a San Diego State offensive unit who's throwing for only 73 yards a game. They're actually second to last in the NCAA in passing yards per contest. Now, total-wise, the Aztecs went 3-0 to the under in their last 3 straight. Boise is 3-1 to the under for the whole year. I'm going to lean toward the Boise State Broncos minus 5.5, under 41. Next game, Washington, UCLA, 10:30 p.m. East. Washington's 2.5, total 65. The Huskies are undefeated on the year, 4-0 against the spread. Covers and wins against the likes of Stanford and Michigan State. Now, these guys currently have the #1 pass offense in the country. Michael Penix, he's throwing for 347 yards per game. Dozen touchdowns, 1 interception, no sacks. The big hog mollies up front doing a great job of protecting Penix. Now, Washington has 3 receivers with over 250 yards apiece. UCLA, on the other side, they failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3. Failures to cover against the likes of South Alabama and Alcorn State. They actually only beat South Alabama 32-31. It was a 1-point game. Really struggled defensively. They were actually laying 16 points in that game. Now, 3 out of UCLA's last 4 did get over the line. Washington's 4-0 to the over for the entire year. I'm going to lean toward the Huskies minus 2.5, over 65. Next game, New Mexico, UNLV, 11 o'clock East. Nevada, Las Vegas, they are minus 16, totals 45.5. Now, the Rebels of UNLV, they are a perfect 4-0 against the spread this year. Covers over the likes of Cal, North Texas, and Utah State. Meanwhile, offensively, they are scoring 40 points a game. Aiden Robbins, he's averaging over 105 rush yards per contest, 7 rushing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the other side of the football, defensively, the Rebels have themselves a top 30 rush defense. Now, New Mexico, on the other side, they're 101st in rushing offense. They're also throwing for only 106 yards a game, really struggling with the ball in their hands. When it comes to the total, no real surprise here. 3 out of New Mexico's last 4 fell under the number. UNLV saw 2 out of their last 3 fall under the line as well. I'm going to lean toward UNLV minus 16 and the under 45.5 in the tight window. Next game, Michigan, Iowa, Saturday action. That'll be a noontime kickoff on October 1st, 2022. Michigan minus 9.5, total 41 and a hook. This Michigan offense, 50 points a game. They're scoring a lot. Top 15 rush offense. Blake Corum, 120 yards a game. He's averaging 9 touchdowns on the ground total. And their defense, well, you can't throw on them. Wolverines, top 5 pass defense. They're taking on an Iowa team who can't move the ball themselves. They're throwing for under 135 yards per game already. They're actually dead last in college football in total yards per game. Iowa may finish the game with negative yardage. Total-wise, both teams 3-1 to the under. No real shock there. Give me Michigan minus 9.5, under 41 and a hook. Next game, Kentucky, Ole Miss, 12 o'clock East. Ole Miss is minus 6.5. Total is 55. Now, both teams are undefeated on the year, 4-0, looking pretty good. Both teams also covered the number in 2 out of their last 3, respectively. Now, Kentucky, I know they look good, they look tough, but they've actually done quite little to establish a run game. They're 121st in the country right now in rush offense. They're actually running for under 95 yards a game. Meanwhile, this Ole Miss defense on the other side, they're holding their opponents to only 10 points a game. Troy Brown's leading the charge with 29 tackles. He's all over the field. Meanwhile, offensively, running back Quinshon Judkins, he's gaining over 105 yards a game on the ground. We're looking at an Ole Miss offense who's in the top 5 in rushing, and they're scoring 41 points a game. Now, total-wise, both teams saw 3 out of their last 4 stay under the total. I'm going to lean toward Ole Miss minus 6.5, under 55. Next matchup, it is going to be Oklahoma squaring off against TCU, not on our big screen, but anyway, that's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern start time Oklahoma's minus 5.5, total 67 and a hook. OU 3-1 straight up on the year, top 10 total yards per game. Eric Gray's averaging 100 rush yards per contest and 7.5 yards per carry. Meanwhile, quarterback Dylan Gabriel, not making a lot of mistakes. He's got 11 TDs, 0 interceptions. Once again, Dylan Gabriel having a pretty good year thus far. Now, this TCU pass defense on the other side, they rank 108th. Once again, pass defense, 108th in the country. And just keep in mind, they've played teams like SMU, Tarleton State, and Colorado. Not particularly offensive juggernauts. Now, total-wise, TCU saw their last 2 straight get over the line. I'm going to lean toward the Sooners, minus 5.5, over 67 and a hook. Next game, Purdue, Minnesota. 12 o'clock East. Minnesota, minus 9.5, total 49. Gophers 4-0 in the year, 4-0 against the spread. Top 3 in total yards per game. And, of course, Mo Ibrahim. This guy looks awesome. He looked great, over the past couple of years. I actually watched the game where he snapped his Achilles like a twig. It was terrible because he was having such a good game. But anyway, he's back to his old form this year, running real hard. 142 yards a game, 8 touchdowns on the ground. Meanwhile, this Minnesota defense, well, they are number 1 in total yards allowed per contest. My hat's all bent up. It looks goofy at that angle. Looks like my head's... It's weird. Very strange. That doesn't look good either. I guess we'll just go with the misshapen hat. That looks horrible. Looks like my head's all bent up. Anyway, moving on. Minnesota. These guys are playing defense. They lead the country in total yards allowed per contest. Of course, that's fewest yards allowed per contest. They're actually giving up under 190 total yards per game. Mariano Sori-Marin, 25 tackles. Meanwhile, Purdue on the other side of things, 91st in rush yards per game, doing very little to establish a run. They failed to cover in their last 2 straight, 1-3 against the spread for the whole year. Total-wise, 2 out of both teams' last 3 did get over the line respectively. Give me Minnesota, minus 9.5, over 49. Next matchup, it is going to be Texas Tech taking on Kansas State. And that will be a 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff, not on our big screen behind me. But anyway, K-State, they are minus 7, total 57 and a hook. And Kansas State, 3-1 straight up on the year, 3-1 against the spread in those ball games. Big win over Oklahoma this past week, 41-34. Offensively, they're a top 10 rush offense. Deuce Vaughn, he's averaging over 115 yards a game. Meanwhile, quarterback Adrian Martinez, he's averaging 5 yards per carry on the ground. He's also rushed it in 6 times. Now, defensively, on the other side of the football, K-State, they're allowing only 15 points a game. They're taking on a Texas Tech squad. 111th in rushing yards per game. Really struggling getting the job done on the ground offensively. They've held to cover in 2 out of their last 3. When it comes to the total, Texas Tech went 3-1 to the over in their last 4. Give me K-State minus 7, over 57.5. Next game, Eastern Washington taking on Florida, 12 o'clock East. That game is currently off the board. Now, the Gators did lose 2 out of their last 3. And they actually failed to cover the number against USF a few weeks ago. Now, Eastern Washington on the other side, they're actually averaging 36 points a game against FCS opponents this year. So doing a nice job moving the ball. And they just lost to FCS powerhouse Montana State by only 3 points. Montana State, that's a school that can beat some FBS teams. They are a powerhouse in that division. They actually scored 35 points against Montana State. I think if this number opens up big enough, the Eagles have a chance to cover. So I'm going to lean toward Eastern Washington getting the job done against the spread. All right, next matchup, it is going to be South Carolina State taking on South Carolina, 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff. That game is currently off the board. South Carolina, beat and covered against Charlotte and Georgia State this year. Both were double-digit point spreads, so they're no stranger covering large numbers. Wide receivers Antwain Wells and Jalen Brooks, they have combined for over 500 receiving yards between the two of them. Now, South Carolina State, they lost 2 out of their last 3. They actually lost to NCAAM this past week and allowed 41 points. So this should be a massacre. I'm going to lean toward the South Carolina Gamecocks getting the job done against the spread. All right, next ball game. Georgia State taking on Army, 12 o'clock East. Army's laying 8.5 at home, totals 58. Now, this Army offense is averaging 38 points a game. They're actually gaining 435 total yards per contest. They're facing a Georgia State defense who's 119th in total yards allowed. They haven't won a game yet. 0-4 straight up, 0-4 against the spread. They are giving up 38 points per game. Now, Georgia State 2-0 to the over in their last couple of games. No real surprise there. Bad defense equals overs. Meanwhile, Army, they went 3-0 to the over in their last 3 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Army minus 8.5, over 58. Next ball game, it is going to be Illinois taking on Wisconsin, and that'll be a 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Wisconsin's 8.5, total 44 and a hook. Now, the Badgers did drop 2 out of their last 3, and they failed to cover twice during that short span. The Badgers are 88th in passing offense. They're taking on an Illinois defense who is holding their opponents to under 150 pass yards a game. They're actually in the top 10 in the country in pass defense, and they're allowing only 8 points per game. Jerzon Newton, 21 tackles, 2.5 sacks. Meanwhile, offensively, Chase Brown, running back, averaging over 150 yards a game on the ground. Total-wise, Illinois 3-0 to the under in their last 3. Wisconsin saw 2 out of their last 3 fall under the line, throwing out that Ohio State game. I'm going to lean toward Illinois plus 8.5, keeping that one close, under 44 and a hook. Next ball game, little ACC action. I'm talking about Louisville taking on Boston College. 12 o'clock Eastern start time. Louisville is minus 16.5, total 51. Louisville winners of 2 out of their last 3, and they covered the number twice during that stretch. Offensively, they're gaining 225 yards per game on the ground. And when it comes to defensive performance here, they're allowing less than 190 yards a game passing. Yaya Diaby and Ashton Gelati, they have 7 sacks between the two of them. Pretty good pass rush there. They're taking on a Boston College team who's 121st in total yards per game, really struggling to get first downs. They're actually averaging under 60 rushing yards per contest. And needless to say, out of their 4 games this year, Boston College, they have not covered once. They are 0-4 against the spread overall for the season. Now, total-wise, BC saw 2 out of their last 3 stay under, throwing out that Florida State game. Meanwhile, Louisville 3-1 to the under themselves. Give me Louisville minus 16.5, under 51. Next matchup, it is going to be Navy taking on Air Force. 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Air Force is minus 14.5, total 37 and a hook. Now, this Air Force offense, they are averaging 38 points a game. They're actually first in college football right now in rush yards per game, gaining over 420 yards per contest on the ground. Meanwhile, defensively on the other side of the football, they're in the top 20 in fewest yards allowed per game. Alec Mock, he has 22 tackles on the season. Now, he's facing a Navy offense on the other side, really struggling, averaging only 14 points a game. They're actually 106th in total yards per contest. These guys lost 2 out of their last 3. And they covered the number only once during that short span. Now, Navy went 2-1 to the under in their last 3 outings as well. I'm going to lean toward Air Force minus 14.5. And the under 37 and a hook in that very small, tight window. Next game, Temple, Memphis, 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff. I think that one I saw up on the big screen behind me, but maybe I didn't. Yeah, there it is. Temple, Memphis, 12 o'clock East. Memphis, minus 20.5, total 50 and a hook. Memphis, 1-3 against the spread this year. Failures to cover against North Texas and Arkansas State. Their defense is allowing 32 points a game, and they're 123rd in pass defense. Meanwhile, Temple, on the other side, they actually play some pretty tough defense themselves. They're holding their opponents to under 140 pass yards per game. They're actually allowing only 15 points per contest as well. Leighton Jordan, 19 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and a pick six. He actually ranks 6th in the NCAA in sacks. Meanwhile, Temple as a team, they successfully covered the point spread in their last 3 straight. They actually had a marquee cover over the likes of Rutgers. Now, total-wise, Temple saw their last 2 fall under the line. 3-1 to the under overall for the year. I'm going to lean toward the Temple Owls, plus 20.5, under 50 and a hook. Next game, not on our big screen, but it is going to be Texas State taking on James Madison, 1:30 p.m. East. JMU is minus 21.5, total 55. JMU, they are 3-0 straight up on the year, 3-0 against the spread as well. They actually beat Appalachian State 32-28 at Appy State this past week. This JMU offense, they're scoring 46 points a game, and they're currently in the top 15 in rushing. Now, defensively, they're allowing only 26 rush yards per game. They're actually leading college football in that category. No real shocker there. Jalen Walker, 18 tackles on the season, 1 interception. Texas State on the other side, offensively, 110th in yards per game, struggling to move the ball. They're actually averaging less than 55 yards a game on the ground. Now, Texas State went 3-0 to the under in their last 3. I'm going to lean toward JMU minus 21.5, under 55. Next game, Oregon State, Utah, 2 o'clock Eastern start time. Utah's minus 11, total 57.5. But even though Utah's 3-1, this is it's a pretty big number for a conference game. Oregon State, they are 4-0 against the spread for the entire season. They actually had marquee covers over the likes of Boise State, Fresno State, and USC. Offensively, they're averaging 38 points a game. And, of course, wide receivers Trayshawn Harrison and Anthony Gold, they have nearly 500 receiving yards between the two of them. Now, defensively, they've got 6 interceptions as well. And when it comes to the total, Oregon State saw 2 out of their last 4 contests fall under the number. Meanwhile, Utah is 2-0 to the under in their last 2 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Oregon State plus 11, under 57.5. Next ball game, it is going to be UMass taking on Eastern Michigan, 2 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Eastern Michigan's minus 21, total 56.5. Now, EMU's just 1-3 against the spread this year, and they're allowing 39 points a game defensively. They're actually 118th in total yards allowed. Meanwhile, UMass offensively, they are gaining over 185 yards a game on the ground. When it comes to defense, they're holding their opponents to only 190 yards a game passing. Jalen Mackey has 27 tackles on the year. Minutemen, 2-0 to the under in their last 2, 3-1 to the under for the entire season. Give me UMass plus 21, under 56.5. Next game, Northern Illinois, Ball State, 2 o'clock East. And I use minus 4, total 61. The Huskies 0-3 straight up in their last 3. They allowed 34 points a game during that stretch. And they're currently 119th in pass defense. Now, Ball State on the other side, they're in the top 35 in passing yards. Ja'Shawn Jackson and Yohines Taylor, they have over 550 receiving yards. When it comes to the rushing, Carson Steele, he's averaging over 105 yards a game on the ground. 2 out of Ball State's last 3 got over the line, throwing out that Georgia Southern game. Meanwhile, Northern Illinois, they are 4-0 to the over overall for the year. Give me Ball State plus 4 over 61. Next game, Bama, Arkansas, 3:30 p.m. East. Bama 16.5, total 60. This Bama defense, top 3 in total yards allowed, giving up just 138 yards a game through the air. Will Anderson, 4.5 sacks, 20 tackles, and a pick 6. We're looking at a Bama team, 3-1 ATS overall, 48 points a game offensively. Now, this Arkansas defense on the other side, they give up over 300 yards a game passing. They're actually 126th in pass defense. And when I do these rankings, guys, just keep in mind we're talking about 131 total qualifying teams in those rankings, 131 FBS teams. So they're 126th in pass defense. Now, as a team, Arkansas, they failed to cover in their last 2 straight, and they suffered a straight-up loss to Texas A&M this past Saturday. Now, total-wise, 3 out of Arkansas's last 4 did get over the number. I'm going to lean toward Bama, minus 16.5, over 60. Next game, Rutgers, Ohio State, 3:30 p.m. East. Ohio State, minus 40.5, total 61. Ohio State covered in their last 2 straight. They scored 129 total points in those 2 ball games. C.J. Stroud, he has over 300 passing yards per game. He's averaging 16 touchdowns, 1 interception, only sacked twice. Wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, over 110 yards a game. He's averaging 5 touchdowns. We're looking at a Buckeye team who's in the top 3 in total yards per game. And, of course, defensively, they're allowing only 16 points per contest. Now, we're looking at a Rutgers offense, not particularly prolific. They're throwing for under 185 yards a game. They rank 111th in passing offense. They also failed to cover in their last 2 straight, and they allowed 27 points Saturday to Iowa. Iowa is arguably the worst offense in the country. Now, total-wise, 2 out of Rutgers' last 3 did get over the line. Ohio State saw their last 2 straight get over the total as well. I'm going to lean toward Ohio State, minus 40.5, over 61. Next game, Oklahoma State, Baylor, 3:30 p.m. East. Baylor's minus 2.5, total 48 and a hook. Baylor covered the number in their last 2 straight, 3-1 against the spread overall for the year. Their defense is in the top 25 in yards allowed per game. They're actually limiting their opponents to under 80 rush yards per contest. Al Walcott, 23 tackles, 2 PDs, and a forced fumble. This Baylor offense is also scoring 41 points a game. Now they're taking on an Oklahoma State defense who's actually 104th in passing yards allowed. And their big wins this year came against the likes of Arkansas Pine Bluff, Central Michigan, and a sputtering Arizona State program. Now, total-wise, Oklahoma State, their contest with Arizona State did fall under the number. Meanwhile, Baylor saw 2 out of their last 3 fall under the line. I'm going to lean toward Baylor, minus 2.5, under 48 and a hook. Next game, Northwestern, Penn State, 3:30 p.m. East. Penn State's minus 23, total 52.5. The Nittany Lions failed to cover against Central Michigan on Saturday. Meanwhile, defensively, they're having a little trouble. They're having some problems stopping the pass, defending the pass. They're 110th in pass defense. Northwestern, on the other side, they're throwing for over 300 yards a game on average. Wide receivers Evan Hall and Malik Washington, they have over 600 yards combined. Penn State 3-0 to the over. Give me Northwestern plus 23, over 52.5. Next game, little ACC action. Should be a good one. I'm talking about Wake Forest, Florida State, 3:30 p.m. East. FSU's minus 7, total 66. 3 of FSU's wins this year came against the likes of Boston College, Louisville, and Duquesne. Basically, what I'm driving at is they might be a little bit untested. Now, Wake Forest, on the other side, they throw for over 310 yards a game. Sam Hartman, he's got 13 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. The Deeks, they're scoring 43 points a game. Now, no real surprise here. Wake Forest 3-0 to the over in their last 3. FSU 2-0 to the over in their last couple of games. Give me Wake Forest +7, keeping that one close, over 66. All right, guys, and since this is a really long podcast, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple-minute break here. I'll be back in a few seconds. What's up, man? You're still here? Yeah, you're still here? I'm just kidding. Anyway, hopefully you were able to fast forward through that. All right, moving on. Iowa State, Kansas. 3:30 Eastern kickoff. Iowa State 3.5, total 58 and a hook. The Cyclones failed to cover 2 out of their last 4. They're 93rd in rushing offense. Kansas on the other side, who'd have thunk it? They're scoring 49 points a game. 4-0 straight up on the year, 4-0 against the spread in those victories. Marquee wins over the likes of Duke, Houston, and West Virginia. Quarterback Jalen Daniels completing 71% of his passes, 11 TDs, 1 interception, 1 sack. That is it. Very efficient. He's also rushing for over 8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns on the ground. KU 3-1 to the over on the year. Iowa State 2-0 to the over in their last 2. Kansas plus 3.5 over 58 and a hook. Next game, Fresno, UConn, 3:30 p.m. East. Fresno State, 23.5, total 56. Fresno throwing for over 330 a game. Top 25 total yards per contest. Wideouts, Jalen Moreno Cropper and Nico Remigio. They have over 400 receiving yards between the two of them. This UConn defense on the other side, they're giving up over 36 points a game. 113th in total yards allowed. Meanwhile, offensively, they're averaging under 95 yards a game passing. Total-wise, 2 out of Fresno's last 3 fell under the number. I'm going to lean toward Fresno, minus 23.5. Under 56. You know what that is. That's the tight window. Next game, Big Ten action. Michigan State taking on Maryland, 3:30 p.m. East. The Terps, Maryland, Terrapins, minus 7. Maryland minus 7, total 59.5. Maryland 3-0 against the spread in their last 3. Covers over the likes of Michigan and SMU. This Terps offense, they are averaging 37 points a game. Top 25 pass offense. Talia Tungavaloa, he is completing 75% of his passes. 7 touchdowns on the year. Meanwhile, this Michigan State defense, 103rd in pass defense. They lost their last 2 games straight. 73 total points allowed, and I don't know what it is, man. Mel Tucker sweats profusely on the sideline. It was absurdly noticeable. He sweats intensely on the sidelines. Give me Maryland minus 7, over 59.5. Next game, Virginia Tech, UNC, 3:30 p.m. East. Tar Heels 8.5, total 53. Hershey's. This UNC defense, let me tell you something about them. They're allowing over 215 yards a game on the ground. They're 127th in total yards allowed per contest. And like I said earlier, when I'm doing these rankings, right, they're 127th out of 131 teams. Bottom of the barrel. Once again, the Tar Heel defense, they're giving up 40 points a game. They're facing a Hokie team who won 2 out of their last 3, and they allow only 17 points per contest themselves. Dax Hollifield has 20 tackles, 2 PDs, and a couple of fumble recoveries. This Virginia Tech defense, strength of this program, they're allowing only 170 pass yards per game. Top 10 in the country in total yards allowed. When it comes to the total, the Hokies are 4-0 to the under on the year. No real shocker there. Give me the Hokies plus 8.5, under 53. Next game, Central Michigan taking on Toledo, 3:30 p.m. East. The Toledo Rockets are 7.5, total 58 and a hook. Now, Toledo did lose their last 2 straight. They've gone just 1-3 against the spread overall for the season. This Toledo defense, they're having some problems slowing down the run. They're 111th in rush defense. Now, they're taking on a Central Michigan offense on the other side. They're actually averaging 31 points a game, and they're throwing for over 300 yards per contest. Carlos Carrier and Jeff Wilson, they have nearly 500 yards receiving between the two of them. When it comes to the total, 2 out of Central Michigan's last 3 did get over the line, throwing out that Penn State game. Meanwhile, Toledo, they saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the total as well. I'm going to lean toward the Central Michigan Chippewas, plus 7.5, over 58.5. Next game, some more Maction. Like I said, I say it every week. Is it still technically Maction if it's not on a Tuesday night? I don't know. I thought it was only Maction if you're watching a MAC game on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday during the week. But anyway, we're talking about some MAC conference action here. I'm talking about Bowling Green, Akron, 3:30 p.m. East. Bowling Green, 6.5, total 52. Now, BG covered in their last 2 straight. They actually had a straight-up win against Marshall. And offensively, these guys are averaging 31 points a game. Dozen touchdown passes, only 1 interception. And defensively, safety Chris Bacon, 27 tackles. He's facing an Akron offense who's scored just 18 total points in their last 3 games. They lost all 3 of those contests. Akron, they are 116th in total yards per game. They're also allowing 40 points a game on the defensive side, and they're 126th in total yards allowed per contest. Now, Bowling Green, they have gone 4-0 to the over for the year. I'm going to lean toward Bowling Green minus 6.5, over 52. Next game, Miami, Ohio, taking on Buffalo, 3:30 p.m. East. Buffalo -1, total 53.5. Buffalo failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3. They're just 1-3 straight up overall for the season. This Buffalo defense, they allow over 34 points per contest, and they rank 109th in total yards allowed. They're taking on a Miami offense on the other side of things, who's gaining over 150 yards a game on the ground, doing a good job rushing the football. And on the other side of things, defensively, Ryan McWood, he has 42 tackles, a pick, and a fumble recovery. Now, total-wise, Buffalo's 3-0 to the over in their last 3. I'm going to lean toward Miami, Ohio, +1, over 53.5. Next contest, Ohio taking on Kent State, 3:30 p.m. East. The Kent State Golden Flashes are 8.5, total 68. Now, I'll tell you what, Kent State has really gone through the grinder. They've already faced Washington, Oklahoma, and Georgia. Crazy strength of schedule there. And, well, this Kent State team, they successfully covered the point spread in their last 3 straight. Covers against the likes of Georgia and Oklahoma during that span. They actually scored 22 points against Georgia. That was like the most points Georgia's given up in a really long time. This Kent State offense, 190 yards a game rushing, and of course, those are against top caliber competition. These guys are able to run the football against really big, well-known, really good Power 5 schools. Now, defensively, Nico Bolden and JoJo Evans, they have over 60 tackles combined. They're taking on an Ohio Bobcats team who failed to cover the point spread in their last 3 straight. Their defense is allowing over 535 yards a game, and they're currently second to last in college football in that category. They're 130th in total yards allowed per contest. They play little to no defense. And speaking of which, Ohio's pass defense, dead last in the country. They give up more yards through the air per game than any other team in Division I. Now, total-wise, Ohio 4-0 to the over on the year. Kent State 3-1 to the over themselves. I'm going to lean toward Kent State minus 8.5, over 68 points. Next game, Citadel, Appalachian State, 3:30 p.m. East. That game is off the board. Now, Appy failed to cover in their last 2 straight, 1-3 against the spread overall for the season. This Appy State defense, they're allowing over 34 points a game. Meanwhile, Citadel on the other side, their defense, well, they've allowed just 34 total points in their last 2 games. If you do the math, it's 17 points per contest they're giving up in their last 2. That's it. So I got to imagine this number is going to be pretty big when it, opens up. I'm going to lean toward Citadel, getting the job done against the spread. Next game, Gardner, Webb, Marshall, 3:30 p.m. East. That game is off the board. This Marshall defense, they're allowing only 16 points a game. D-back Michael Abraham, 3 interceptions. Charlie Gray, 29 tackles. And of course, offensively, Kalen LeBourne, he's running everywhere. He's rushing for 135 yards a game, and he scored 6 times. Now, this Gardner-Webb defense on the other side, they're allowing over 35 points a game. They lost to the likes of Mercer and Elon. I'm sure this is going to be a big number. I think Marshall should be able to cover it. Give me Marshall getting the job done against the point spread. Next game, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, 4 o'clock East. Mississippi State's -3, total 46.5. Now the Bulldogs, they failed to cover in their last 2 straight. They actually failed to cover against Bowling Green this past Saturday. This Mississippi State offense, they're averaging only 80 yards a game on the ground, really having a tough time getting going with the rushing attack. Now they're taking on a Texas A&M defense who's really tough, they're really fast, they're really physical, and they're allowing only 11 points a game. They have a top 10 pass defense. Antonio Johnson, 38 tackles. Chris Russell, 29 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Texas A&M 4-0 to the under. Mississippi State saw 2 out of their last 3 fall under. Give me the Aggies of Texas A&M +3, under 46.5. Next game, Georgia Southern taking on Coastal. 4 o'clock Eastern start time. Coastal Carolina, 9.5, total 64. Now the Chanticleers failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3. Failures to cover against the likes of Buffalo and Gardner-Webb. This Coastal pass defense, not very good. 112th in the country in passing yards allowed per game. They're taking on a Georgia Southern offense who throws for over 320 yards per game themselves. Quarterback Kyle Van Treese, he's thrown for nearly 1,300 yards on the season already. And he's only been sacked once, so the big guys up front really doing a nice job of protecting him. Also, Van Treese doing a good job getting the ball out and away before trouble comes to him. Now, as a team, we're looking at a Georgia Southern program who's 3-1 straight up for the year, 3-1 against the spread during that stretch. They also saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the number, throwing out that Ball State game. Meanwhile, Coastal went 2-0 to the over in their last couple of games themselves, 3-1 to the over for the season. I'm going to lean toward Georgia Southern +9.5, over 64. Next game, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, 4 o'clock East. FAU's -3.5, total 67.5. FAU's just 1-3 straight up in their last 4. Their defense allows over 400 yards a game. They're facing a North Texas offense who's running for 200 yards a game on the ground. They're actually in the top 30 in the country in total yards per game. Quarterback Austin Awney, he's thrown for over 1,300 pass yards, and he's only been sacked 3 times as well. So his linemen doing a great job of protecting him. Now, total-wise, North Texas saw their last 3 get over the number. I'm going to lean toward North Texas +3.5, over 67.5. Next game, Wagner, Syracuse, 5 o'clock East, off the board. Q's 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread. Michael Jones, 33 tackles, couple of sacks. Wagner, they scored just 14 total points in their last 2 games. They're 0-3 straight up for the year. Big numbers coming. Syracuse is going to do it. Give me Syracuse against the spread. Next game, South Alabama, Louisiana, 5 o'clock East. The South Alabama Jaguars are -9.5 on the road, total 49. Now, Salah's 4-0 against the spread. When I say Salah, I'm talking about South Alabama. Salah's 4-0 against the spread for the year. Covers against the likes of Louisiana Tech and UCLA. Their offense is scoring nearly 40 points a game. And they're in the top 35 in the country in passing. They're facing a Louisiana Ragin' Cajun defense who's 83rd in pass defense this year. They're on a 2-game losing streak. They failed to cover in both of those losses. And when they have the football in their hands, well, they're just 102nd in total yards per game. Now, total-wise, the Cajuns, 2 out of their last 3 fell under the line, throwing out that Eastern Michigan game. Meanwhile, Salah saw their game versus Louisiana Tech stay under the total as well. I'm going to lean toward South Alabama, minus 9.5, under 49. Next game, Pac-12. Cal, Wazoo, 5:30 East. Washington State's minus 3.5, total 54. Wazoo, they covered the number in their last 3 straight. Covers against the likes of Oregon and Wisconsin during that span. This Wazoo defense, 14 sacks on the season. Dion Henley, 4 sacks, 38 tackles, couple of forced fumbles, and a pick. Now, Cal lost to Notre Dame, scored just 17 points in that loss a few weeks back. And they also failed to cover against the likes of UNLV, scored only 20 points in that failure to cover. Now, 2 out of Cal's last 3 ball games did fall under the line. Wazoo went 3-0 to the under in their last 3, throwing out the Oregon game. Give me Washington State, minus 3.5. Under 54. Next game, Liberty, Old Dominion, 6 o'clock East. Liberty's 1.5, total 43. Now the Flames are 3-1 straight up for the year. They actually covered the number in 2 out of their last 3 as well. Covers against the likes of Wake Forest and UAB. This Liberty offense, they are gaining nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. And Day Hunter and Caden Salter, they have just about 550 rushing yards combined. Now they're taking on an ODU defense on the other side. They are 112th in rush defense. They're having a tough time slowing down the run. This could be a recipe for disaster. They're actually allowing just about 450 total yards per contest. Of course, I'm talking about Old Dominion. Now, as a team, the Monarchs failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3. And they did suffer straight-up losses to the likes of Virginia and ECU. Now, total-wise, both teams saw 2 out of their last 3 ball games stay under the line, respectively. I'm going to lean toward Liberty, minus 1.5, under 43. Next matchup, New Hampshire taking on Western Michigan, 6 o'clock East. That game is currently off the board. Although Western Michigan, they did lose their last 2 straight. They've gone just 1-3 against the spread overall for the season. This Western Michigan offense, they've been held to 13 points or less in their 3 losses this year. Now they're taking on a New Hampshire team who's 3-1 straight up overall for the year themselves. 31 points a game they're averaging offensively. I realize most of that is against FCS competition, but I got to imagine they're probably going to be catching a handful of points here. So I'm going to actually lean toward New Hampshire getting the job done against the spread. Next game, UTEP taking on Charlotte, 6 o'clock East. UTEP, 2.5, total 52. The Miners, 2-1 straight up in their last 3 victories against Boise State and New Mexico. Their defense is allowing under 160 passing yards per game. That is a top 15 pass defense. And that's right, I'm talking about UTEP. Cal Wallerstadt, 32 tackles, 3 sacks, and a fumble recovery. He's facing a Charlotte offense who's 119th in the country in rushing yards per game. Meanwhile, defensively, they're allowing a whole bunch of points. They're actually giving up over 47 points a game. They're allowing more yards per game than any other team in college football. No real surprise here. Charlotte's 4-0 to the over in their last 4 straight. Give me UTEP minus 2.5 over 52. Next game should be a good one. I'm talking about LSU taking on Auburn, 7 o'clock Eastern kickoff. LSU's 8.5, total 45 and a hook. LSU's 3-0 straight up in their last 3. They successfully covered the point spread in all 3 of those victories. Now this LSU offense, they're averaging nearly 40 points per contest, just about 40 points a game. They're actually in the top 25 in total yards per contest. Quarterback Jaden Daniels, he is completing 73% of his passes. No interceptions yet. Doing a great job protecting the football. He's taking on an Auburn squad who is yet to cover a point spread this year. They're 0-4 against the number overall for the season. They rank 104th in passing, really having a tough time throwing the ball. When it comes to the number, 2 out of Auburn's last 3 fell under the number. LSU, they're 3-1 to the under overall for the season. I'm going to lean toward the Tigers of LSU, minus 8.5, under 45 and a hook. Next ball game, ECU taking on USF, and that'll be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. East Carolina's minus 8.5 on the road, total 58 points. ECU 3-1 against the spread overall for the year. Marquee covers against the likes of NC State and Old Dominion. Should have beat NC State. That was a missed field goal as time expired to cost them the game, but they still ended up covering. This ECU offense, top 35 in yards per game. Wideout Isaiah Winstead, 100 yards per game he's averaging. They're taking on a South Florida team who lost their last 2 straight. Just 1-3 against the spread overall for the year. The Bulls, they are throwing for under 155 yards a game. Real problems throwing the football. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, they're having real problems stopping the run. 128th in the country in rush defense. Now, total-wise, both schools saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the line. I'm going to lean toward ECU, minus 8.5, over 58. Next ball game should actually be a good one. I know this is a big number, but I think it's probably going to be a little bit closer than people think. I'm talking about Cincinnati taking on Tulsa, 7 o'clock East. Now, Cincinnati's minus 10 away from home, total 60.5. Bearcats, they did fail to cover in 2 out of their last 4. And those were failures to cover against the likes of Miami, Ohio, and Arkansas. Now, Tulsa, on the other side of things, they successfully covered the point spread in their last 2 straight. They're a top 5 pass offense. Wide receiver Keelan Stokes, he's averaging over 125 yards a game, along with 3 touchdowns. Tulsa as a team, 14 touchdown passes to just 2 interceptions. They're averaging 39 points a game. Now, total-wise, 3 out of Tulsa's last 4 got over the number. Cincinnati 4-0 to the over themselves. I'm going to lean toward Tulsa plus 10, over 60.5. Next game, UL Monroe, Arkansas State, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Arkansas State's minus 7.5, total 60. Arkansas State covering the number this year. 4-0 against the spread overall for the season. Covers against the likes of ODU, Memphis, and Ohio State. The Red Wolves, only 1 interception this year. Doing a good job protecting the football. Now, defensively, Malik Straker, 29 tackles, 2 PDs, and a forced fumble. They're taking on a UL Monroe offense who's scoring only 18 points a game. They actually rank 109th in total yards per contest, and they're throwing for under $180 a game. This Warhawk defense on the other side, they're allowing 35 points per contest. When it comes to the total, Arkansas State saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the line, throwing out that ODU game. I'm going to lean toward Arkansas State, minus 7.5, over 60. With that, guys, we are at the hour mark. I'm going to take break number 2 because my butt's falling asleep. Yo, thanks for that break, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for letting me do that. All right, next game. Troy. Western Kentucky, 7 o'clock East. WKU's 5.5, total 57 and a hook. Western Kentucky, 3-0 against the spread in their last three. 3-1 straight up overall for the season. Top 15 passing yards per contest. 48 points a game they're averaging. David Davis and Malachi Corley, they're gaining. They've gained nearly 650 receiving yards combined, 8 touchdowns. Meanwhile, defensively, they have a top 35 rush defense. Troy, on the other side, they're rushing for only 71 yards a game, 125th in the country in that category. Both teams saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the line. Give me Western Kentucky, minus 5.5, over 57 and a hook. Next game, Georgia, Missouri, 7:30 East. Georgia's 28, total 54.5. Georgia, top 5 yards per contest. 3 receivers over 225 yards. They threw only 1 interception, and they've been sacked only twice. Meanwhile, defensively, they're allowing only 8 points a game. Malachi Starks, 17 tackles, couple of picks. Missouri, on the other side, 96th in passing. Failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3. Total-wise, Missouri 3-0 to the under in their last 3. Georgia 4-0 to the under overall for the year. Give me Georgia minus 28, under 54.5. Next game, ACC action. NC State, Clemson, 7:30 p.m. East. Clemson 7, total 41. Clemson 0-3 against the spread in their last 3. Furman and Louisiana Tech, they failed to cover against. Their defense allowed 65 total points in their last 2 outings, 104th in the country in pass defense. NC State, on the other side, 36 points a game. They're averaging 4-0 straight up overall for the season. And on the defensive side of things, they're allowing only 11 points a game. They've got themselves a top 10 rush defense. Drake Thomas and Tanner Engel, over 40 tackles combined between the two of them. When it comes to the number, 2 out of these teams' last 3 ball games fell under the number, respectively, throwing out their most recent outings. I'm going to lean toward NC State plus 7, under 41. Next game, Indiana, Nebraska, 7:30 p.m. East. Nebraska, 6.5, total 59 and a hook. The Cornhuskers 0-4 against the spread overall for this season. Georgia Southern, North Dakota, and Northwestern, they failed to cover against. This Nebraska defense allows over 225 yards a game on the ground. They rank 128th in total yards allowed per contest. Now, Indiana, on the other side, they're in the top 30 in passing. Wide receiver Cam Camper, he is averaging 105 yards a game receiving. The Hoosiers, 3-1 straight up overall for the year. 3-0 to the over in their last 3. 2 out of Nebraska's last 3 got over the line as well, throwing out that Oklahoma game. Give me Indiana plus 6.5, over 59 and a hook. Next game, Virginia Duke, 7:30 p.m. East. Duke 2.5, total 49. Duke's 3-1 straight up overall for the year, rushing for nearly 200 yards a game and 10 total touchdowns on the ground. And, of course, passing-wise, they've thrown only a couple of interceptions, only 2 interceptions this year. They're taking on a Virginia team who lost 2 out of their last 3. They were held to 20 points or less in all 3 of those ball games there. And when it comes to the season, well, they're just 1-3 against the spread overall for the year. 94th in offensive passing. Cavaliers 4-0 to the under on the year. Duke 3-1 to the under themselves. Give me Duke minus 2.5, under 49. Next game, San Jose State, Wyoming, 7:30 p.m. East. San Jose State minus 2.5, total 42 and a hook. San Jose State covered their last 2 straight. Western Michigan and Auburn they covered against. Their defense is allowing only 15 points a game. Top 20 pass defense. Kyle Harmon's leading the charge with 23 tackles, couple of PDs and a sack. This Wyoming offense on the other side, they throw for under 150 yards a game. They rank 114th in total yards per contest. 2 out of Wyoming's last 3 fell under the number. San Jose State 3-0 to the under in their last 3 themselves. Give me the Spartans of San Jose State minus 2.5. Under 42 and a hook. Next game, Georgia Tech, Pitt, 8 o'clock East. Pitt's minus 23, total 48. Pitt's 2-0 straight up in their last couple of games. 79 total points combined they scored in those contests. Running back Israel Abanaconda has, he's averaging 120 yards a game, and he has 7 total touchdowns. This Pitt defense, they're also allowing just 98 yards a game on the ground. Servosha Dennis, 24 tackles, 3 sacks. Georgia Tech loses up 3 out of their last 4. 20 total points in those losses they scored. Their offense is 112th in total yards per game. Meanwhile, defensively, they're giving up over 210 yards a game on the ground. Total-wise, Pitt they could very well put this one over themselves. They are 3-1 to the over for the entire year. Give me Pitt minus 23 over 48. Next game, Florida International, New Mexico State, 8 o'clock East. New Mexico State's minus 14, total 54. Now, this Aggie offense, they're scoring only 15 points per contest, and they're throwing for under 120 yards a game through the air. They're actually 125th in the country in total yards per contest. They're taking on a Florida International defense who actually allows under 120 yards a game on the ground. They do a pretty nice job defending the run. Demetrius Hill, 28 tackles and a forced fumble. When it comes to the total, FIU saw their game against Texas State fall under. Meanwhile, New Mexico State saw 2 out of their last 3 fall under the line, throwing out that Hawaii game. Give me FIU plus 14, under 54. Next game, Colorado, Arizona, 9:30 p.m. East. Arizona's minus 17, total 56.5. Arizona, top 25 passing offense. Jacob Cowling and Dorian Singer, they have nearly 700 receiving yards combined. This Colorado defense on the other side, 124th in yards allowed. They're also giving up over 43 points a game. And when the Buffs have the ball in their hands, well, they're 126 in total yards per game. They're actually averaging only 11 points per contest. I'm going to lean toward Arizona minus 17, under 56.5. Next game, Arizona State, USC, 10:30 p.m. East. USC minus 26.5, total 61. The Trojans are scoring over 42 points a game, rushing for about 200 yards per contest. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, they're giving up only 18 points a game, and they're holding their opponents to under 195 yards a game passing. These guys are undefeated through 4 ball games, 3-1 against the spread during that stretch. They're facing a sputtering Arizona State program who lost their last 3 straight and failed to cover in all of those games. Now, the Sun Devils, they are 101st in passing offense. Meanwhile, on the other side of the football, they're allowing over 175 yards a game on the ground, having some problems slowing down the run. Now, the Sun Devils are 4-0 to the under this year. USC saw their last 2 straight fall under the line as well. I'm going to lean toward the Trojans of USC, minus 26.5, under 61. Next and final breakdown for the video, it is going to be Stanford, Oregon, 11 o'clock East. Oregon, 16.5, total 62. And even though the Ducks won their last 3 straight, they're having problems defending the pass. They're actually giving up over 300 pass yards per contest. They're 125th in pass defense in the country. Meanwhile, Stanford, on the other side, they're in the top 40 in passing yards per game. Stanford 2-0 to the over in their last 2. Oregon 3-0 to the over in their last 3. Give me Stanford plus 16.5, over 62. And with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and dive into our quick pick recap. Give me BYU minus 23.5, under 61. Tulane plus 2.5, over 55 and a hook. Middle Tennessee State plus 4.5, over 61 and a hook. Boise minus 5.5, under 41. Washington minus 2.5, over 65. UNLV minus 16, under 45 and a half. Michigan minus 9.5, under 41 and a hook. Ole Miss minus 6.5, under 55. OU minus 5.5, over 67 and a hook. That's Oklahoma, by the way. Minnesota minus 9.5, over 49. Kansas State minus 7, over 57 and a hook. Give me Eastern Washington getting the job done against the spread. I also like South Carolina, the Gamecocks, getting the job done against the number. Give me Army minus 8.5, over 58. Illinois plus 8.5 under 44.5. Louisville minus 16.5 under 51. Air Force minus 14.5 under 37.5. Temple plus 20.5 under 50.5. JMU minus 21.5 under 55. Oregon State plus 11 under 57.5. UMass plus 21 under 56.5 points. Ball State plus 4 over 61. Alabama minus 16.5 over 60. Ohio State minus 40.5 over 61. Baylor minus 2.5 under 48.5 points. Northwestern plus 23 over 52.5. Wake Forest plus 7 over 66. Kansas plus 3.5 over 58.5. Fresno State minus 23.5 under 56. Maryland minus 7 over 59.5. Virginia Tech plus 8.5 under 53. Central Michigan plus 7.5 over 58.5. Bowling Green minus 6.5 over 52. Miami, Ohio plus 1 over 53.5. Kent State minus 8.5 over 68. Give me Citadel getting the job done against the spread. I like Marshall getting the job done against the number as well. Texas A&M plus 3 under 46.5. Georgia Southern plus 9.5 over 64. North Texas plus 3.5 over 67.5. Give me Syracuse getting the job done against the point spread. South Alabama minus 9.5 under 49. Washington State minus 3.5 under 54. Liberty minus 1.5 under 43. Give me New Hampshire getting the job done against the spread. I like UTEP minus 2.5 over 52. LSU minus 8.5 under 45.5. ECU minus 8.5 over 58. Tulsa plus 10 over 60.5. Arkansas State minus 7.5 over 60. Western Kentucky minus 5.5 over 57.5 points. Georgia Bulldogs minus 28 under 54.5. NC State plus 7 under 41. Indiana plus 6.5 over 59.5. Duke minus 2.5 under 59. San Jose State minus 2.5 under 42.5 points. Pitt minus 23 over 48. Florida International plus 14 under 54. Arizona minus 17 under 56.5. USC minus 26.5 under 61. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean towards Stanford plus 16.5 over 62. With that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my website. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy week 5 to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.